Hi, and welcome to chapter one. This week's chapter one is Bonfires, Backpacks, and Brawls. Chapter one. As the first rays of the sun kissed the serene waters of Happy Trails Campground, I found myself in a rather unusual classroom, an old, withered aluminum boat that had seen much better days, bobbing gently on the lake under the watchful eyes of the vintage campers lining the shore. My instructor, none other than Dottie Swagger. Dottie wasn't only one of my best friends, but she was also the manager of Happy Trails Campground. And she'd taken it upon herself to enter us into a bass fishing tournament and teach me the fine art of bass fishing. Why, you ask? Well, because the Daniel Boone National Park Bass Fishing Tournament was just around the corner, and we were determined not only to participate, but to win. Well, she was, anyways. And me, I was just hoping to be able to do something with her that she enjoyed since she was always doing things with me that I enjoyed. The campground was buzzing with excitement. The swan paddle boats glided gracefully across the lake, carrying guests in high spirits, while ducks meandered through the water, unperturbed by the human activity. On the sandy beach, campers lounged under the sun, some cheering on the kids to venture into the water, and others simply enjoying the peaceful morning. And over by the tiki hut, Henry Bryant, our handyman, had outdone himself decorating with festive lights shaped like fish, setting the perfect backdrop for the upcoming tournament hosted by the local Boy Scouts. The atmosphere was electric, a delightful blend of competition and camaraderie. Dottie, I always thought bass fishing was a matter of skill and the right lure, not this, I said, grimacing as I held up a wiggling worm, its sliming body twisting between my fingers. It was a far cry from the sleek artificial lures I'd seen in sporting goods stores. Besides, we don't even have bass in this lake. Maybelline, Dottie chided with her tone that somehow always managed to be both scolding and endearing. She pronounced my full name in a way that could coax a smile out of me, even if I was knee deep in mud or, as it happened, elbow deep in a bowl of worms. With her cigarette precariously dangling from her lips, she reached over, untethered by the swinging hook, and demonstrated how to bait the hook with the confidence that left me in awe. The moment the line hit the water, it was as if the lake itself was in Dottie's lesson, rewarding her with a bite almost immediately. Wee doggy, she exclaimed, reeling in a catfish that seemed too big and ugly to belong in our serene setting. As it flopped helplessly in the bottom of the boat, Dottie turned to me, expecting me to take the next step. Removing the fish from the hook was a task I was not prepared for. The sight of a catfish gasping and flailing was enough to make me step back and think about the whole tournament. You want me to what? Put my finger where? I couldn't mask my horror. Fishing, it seemed, was not for the faint of heart. Dottie stood up in the rickety old aluminum boat, and the sudden shift in weight made it teeter dangerously. My heart leapt to my throat. Visions of us tumbling into the lake flashing before my eyes as I steadied myself using a hand to grip each side of the boat. But not Dottie. She was as cool as a cucumber, unfazed. She balanced herself with ease of a seasoned sailor, her focus unbroken. She held the still flopping catfish firmly in one hand and the other wielding the fish rod like a maestro conducting an orchestra. Pay attention, Maybelline, Dottie instructed, her voice steady over the gentle lapping of the water against our boat. She jutted the stinky thing in front of my face, and I leaned back. First things first, you gotta hold the fish right like this. Grip it just behind the gills, firm, but don't squeeze too hard. You don't want to hurt it more than we already have. I watched equal parts fascination and horrified as Dottie demonstrated. She cradled the catfish with the tenderness that contrasted with her rugged exterior, her fingers expertly positioned to avoid the spine. Next up, dealing with the hook, she continued. The fish's mouth is slightly agape, revealing the hook lodged firmly inside. You see here, the hook's got to come out the way it went in. No yanking, no pulling. That way, it just hurts the fish. If you do that, it don't hurt the fish and you won't make a bigger mess. First things first, you got to hold the fish right. Grip it behind the gills, firm, but don't squeeze too hard. You don't want to hurt it more than we already have. I watched in equal parts fascination and horrified as Dottie demonstrated. She cradled that catfish with a tenderness that contrasted with her eager and her rugged exterior, her fingers expertly positioned to avoid the spine. Next up, dealing with the hook, she continued. The fish's mouth was slightly open, revealed the hook lodged firmly inside. You see here, the hook's got to come out the way it came in, no yanking or pulling. That way we don't hurt the fish. With the cigarette still perched at the corner of her mouth, Dottie used her free hand to gently press down on the hook's shank, the part attached to the line. This maneuver, she explained, was to disengage the barb from the fish's flesh. Then you twist it lightly, just like this, she demonstrated with the motion, and ease the hook out. The process was delicate and it required a finesse that I hadn't associated with fishing. And under Dottie's skilled hand, the hook came free with minimal fuss. And the catfish, though undoubtedly relieved, continued its frantic dance in Dottie's grasp. Now for the release, she said. Moving toward the side of the boat, she prompted another heart swooping wobble. Always gently put it back in the water. We're sportsmen, Maybelline. We respect our opponents, even if they're scaly and spend their lives in the muck. With a soft splash, the catfish was returned to the aquatic home, appearing beneath the surface with a flick of its tail, leaving ripples as the only sign of the brief encounter with us. Dottie turned to me, a look of unexpected in her eyes. All right, you're next. Don't worry, she added with a wink. I've got a feeling you're a natural. I don't think this is for me, I said, rethinking the whole idea about me begging for us to be doing something together. And this, something that she loved, was not something I was loving. Hogwash, she said, pointing directly at me with the finger, now holding the cigarette. You asked me what I wanted to do this spring. You said it should be something I loved. And Harrison and I love fishing, and there ain't no better time for me to teach you something that I love than participating in the bass tournament. There was no way she was going to let me off the hook like she did the catfish. Besides, Harrison was a Boy Scout and he was the leader until he died. Dottie had really never opened up about her life with her deceased husband. I've learned more about him, as well as Dottie, from Nikki Swagger, Dottie's stepdaughter. I know you really love this, but what if I just cheer you from the sidelines? I wasn't sure how I was going to get out of the situation. I don't feel like I'm going to get enough practice before tomorrow's event. I didn't say it directly, but that was a little dig because I had been asking her to help me, but she didn't have time to teach me until today, and the tournament was starting tomorrow. Look at Henry, I pointed to the handyman who had somewhat taken a hankering for Dottie. Yes, he has an eye for her. And Henry was busy adjusting the fish shaped lights around the tiki hut, his focus occasionally drifting our way. And it was no secret around Normal, our small town nestled in the holler of the Daniel Boone National Forest, that Henry had a soft spot for Dottie. His attempts to catch her attention, usually with a mix of handyman prowess and awkward charm, were as endearing as they were transparent. But at one point, they had been competing in a dance competition, and though Dottie never told me what happened, they stopped. I'm sure it had to do with her getting too close to him. And Dottie was so tough on the exterior, but on the inside, she was a big old bowl of homemade nanner pudding. Giving up before we even started ain't the May West I know, she countered, her voice laced with conviction. The mention of Harrison, Dottie's late husband, and a dedication Boy Scout leader added a layer of depth to her insistence. It wasn't just about fishing. It was about honoring his memory and sharing passions and perhaps a little bit of healing too. But, anyways, Harrison believed in trying new things and pushing out of control zone, comfort zone. That's what scouting him taught him. Blah, blah, blah. 4 and 9. Harrison believed in trying new things and pushing out of comfort zones. That's what scouting taught him, and that's what he would have wanted us for us to blah. 9 o'clock. Harrison believed in trying new things and pushing out comfort zones. That's what scouting taught him, and that's what he would want for us, Dottie continued, her words carrying the weight of unspoken stories and shared years with her husband. The campground, bustling with activity and the spirit of adventure, seemed to echo her sentiments. The scene around us was vibrant, and with the life of the campground, campers of all ages were gearing up for the tournament. Their enthusiasm was infectious. Children practiced casting lines under the watchful eye of adults. Laughter and chatting filled the air. The scent of barbecue drifted from one of the nearby sites, a reminder of the communal dinner planned for this evening. Imagine all the stories we'll tell tonight around the campfire, Dottie said, gesturing toward the fire pit where campers were later gather and soon be sharing those tales and roasting marshmallows under a blanket of stars. How about Mae West concert her first catch with the whole campground cheering her on? Words painted a picture where the challenge of the tournament faded into the background, replaces with the warmth of the community and a joy of shared experience. It was a vision hard to resist and one that spoke to my heart. All right, Dottie, I sighed. I'll keep trying. With a deep breath, I stilled myself for the task at hand, reaching back into the styrofoam bowl that housed our squirmy bait. My finger closed around another worm, its body cool and slippery. In my determination to prove myself, my grip was too loose, and the worm made a daring escape, dropping onto the boat's floor with a thud. Shoot! I exclaimed, momentarily forgetting the precarious balance required in our small aluminum vessel. I stood up quickly, intent on rescuing the wayward worm before I could wiggle out of the way, and unfortunately, the boat had other plans. My sudden movement to the right sent it teetering dangerously to the left, a silent warning I'd failed to heed. My sudden movement to the right sent it tilting dangerously, a silent warning I failed to heed in my worm rescue mission. The realization hit me a fraction too late. My eyes widened in shock, and a string of sputtering words escaped me as the world seemed to tilt on its axis. Dottie! Was all I managed before the boat gave a final, treacherous lurch, sending us both tumbling into the cool embrace of the lake. The water closed around my head, a shock of cold that drove the breath from my lungs. I surfaced, sputtering and coughing. The taste of the fresh water mingled with a bizarre sense of exhilaration. Above the sound of my own splashing, I could hear Dottie laughing, a rich, infectious sound that seemed to bubble up from the depths of the lake. I blinked the water from my eyes just in time to see her grinning at me, her hair plastered to her head, making her look both ridiculous and endearing. Well, May, that's one way to get acquainted with the fish, she joked, still chuckling as she tread water beside me. Around us, the boat floated serenely as if mocking our unplanned dive. Just as I managed to catch my breath from the laughter and the shock of the cold water, a small splash announced the arrival of Fifi, my little white poodle. With a grace that only a dog of her stature, as a retired pedigreed show dog, can manage, she paddled through the water towards us, her determination as clear as the water around her. It was a sight that only added to the hilarity of our situation, her tiny legs moving in a perfectly doggy paddle as she made her way to her floundering human. On the beach, Chester, and mine and Hank's other dog, who is a loyal hunting dog, was making his own contribution to the commotion. Unable to contain his worry and excitement, he paced back and forth along the water's edge, howling mournfully. It was as if he was chastising us for our reckless plunge, or perhaps laminating. Unable to contain his worry and excitement, he paced back and forth along the water's edge, howling mournfully, as if he was mocking us for our reckless plunge. Donnie and I exchanged amused glances as our bond strengthened by the shared ordeal, and now by the antics of my dog. Looks like the cavalry has arrived, I quipped, nodding towards Fifi, who was now circling us with an eagerness that bellied her small size before she caught sight of the ducks that were close by. Then she started swimming towards them, forgetting all about me. And Chester leading the charge from the shore, Dottie added, laughing still laced her voice. She reached out to scoop around Fifi. And Chester leading the charge from the shore, Dottie added, laughter still leading her voice. The sound of a small boat engine cut through the laughter and chatter from the shore. We turned to see Henry maneuvering a small motorboat towards us with a determined look on his face. It was as he'd seen and sensed our predicament from afar. Or perhaps Chester's howling had given a more effective than a distress signal. And Chester leading the charge from the shore, Dottie said. Laughter. And Chester leading the shore. And Chester leading the charm from the and Chester leading the charge from the shore, Dottie added, laughter still lacing her voice. The sound of a small boat engine cut through the laughter and the chatter from us. We turned to see Henry maneuvering a small motorboat coming at us with a determined look on his face. It was as if he had sensed our predicament from afar, or perhaps Chester's howling had been more effective than any distress signal. Looks like our knight in shining armor has traded his horse for horsepower, I remarked, unable to resist the pun. The sight of Henry was always ready to leap into action brought a sense of relief mingled with amusement. There he was, with his unwavering readiness to assist, whether it was fixing a broken step, stringing up fish lights, or now rescuing two wayward fisherwomen from their unintended swim. As Henry's boat drew near, the engine's hum grew louder. Need a lift? Henry called out, a grin spraying across his face as he cut the engine, allowing the boat to drift the few feet towards us. His eyes twinkled with a mix of concern and mirth, clearly amused by the sight before him, but ready to lend a hand. You owe me some cigarettes. Dottie held up her waterlogged player cigarette case once we were settled in Henry's boat, the warmth of the sun drying out our damp clothes. Dottie leaned toward Henry with the smile, gleam in her eye. And you know, Henry, I reckon May just ain't cut out for fishing business, she said. Her voice was rich with the melodious twang of the South. She's more suited for dry land adventures if you catch my drift. She paused for a moment, allowing a playful smile to dance across her lips before continuing. So, how about it? Would you like to take her place in the tournament? Lord knows we might stand a chance of catching something more than just a cold if you're on my team, she said. Henry, the gentleman, chuckled at Dottie's suggestion, the idea clearly appealing to him. His eyes met mine in the mirror of the boat, a silent question hanging between us. You can have the day off if you take me off the hook. Literally, I said with a smile. It was a proposition that made sense. Henry, with his keen eye and steady hand, was undoubtedly way more better fisherman than I was, and I could ever hope to be on such short notice. I suppose, was Henry's answer. As the boat glided back to the shore, the laughter and the light-hearted banter between us unscored the unbreakable bonds that tied the three of us together. And the little hint of a romance between Dottie and Henry that I thought had been lost was more alive than ever. Chapter 1, Bonfire, Backpacks, and Brawls.